To the Kairos Bridge. I'm Bethany Haney. We are excited to be in a series on parenting through the stages of development. And today we are in Erikson's stage 5 about adolescent years, the ages between 11 and 18 or 20, depending on the sources that you look at. But this is a part 1 of a 2-part episode on the teen years. There's a moment that every parent of a young teenager remembers when the child who used to climb into your lap, who told you everything, who wanted you at every soccer game, every school event, just stopped. One day they're rolling their eyes at the things you say. They don't want your help with anything. You offer and they shut down, and you're standing there wondering, what did I do? Where did they go? And is this permanent? Underneath the frustration, if we're honest, there's some grief there because you miss them. And you're afraid that the more you reach toward them, the further away that they'll go. I want to tell you something, though, before anything else. Your teenager hasn't gone anywhere. They are in the middle of one of the most important and disorienting developmental tasks of their entire life. They're figuring out who they are. And that process, by design, requires some distance from you. That's normal development. This episode is not about how to get your teenager back. It's about understanding what they are actually doing and what they're going through so that you can be exactly what they need you to be right now. So Erik Erikson called this stage identity versus role confusion. It spans roughly the ages of 11 to 18. And so it's complex and so significant that we're going to give it 2 episodes. Today, we're going to focus on the earlier years, the ages of 11 to 15, the beginning of that identity search. The central question of this stage is, who am I? Not as a child, not as my parents' child or who my parents told me I am, but as a separate person with my own values, my own beliefs, and my own sense of self. That question cannot be answered easily from inside the family system that is constantly telling them who they are. It has to be answered in relationship with the world outside. This is what that pulling away is. That's what the eye rolls are. That is what the sudden intense focus on peers and friends is. Your teenager's not rejecting you. They are differentiating from you. And differentiation is not the same as rejection. It's the developmental work of becoming themselves. And when this stage resolves well, when the young person has enough safety to explore their identity without losing the relationship, what develops is a coherent sense of self. Values that they own, a direction that they choose, an identity that holds up under pressure. When it doesn't resolve well, when the exploration is shut down by parents, or the relationship is so fractured that there's no safe base to return to, what ends up developing is role confusion. The person doesn't know who they are. They try on identity after identity, looking for one that fits. Who is so deeply vulnerable to whatever the loudest voice is around them that they become who people tell them that they should be. Let's talk about the rewiring of the brain that's happening, because what's happening in the teenage brain during these years is nothing short of extraordinary. The brain is undergoing its second major developmental surge. The first one was in infancy. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of judgment, impulse control, and long-term thinking, is being rebuilt from the inside out. And while that rebuilding is happening, the limbic system, or the emotional and reward center, is running at full intensity. That means practically that your early teenager is experiencing emotions with adult intensity, but managing them with a child's regulatory capacity. They're seeking novelty and risk because the dopamine reward system is highly activated. They are intensely focused on peer connection because the social brain is rewired to prioritize belonging outside of the family. And they are impulsive, reactive, and prone to shut down, not because something's wrong with them, but because the hardware is in the middle of an upgrade. That's not an attitude problem. That's neurology. And understanding that doesn't mean that we lower our standards or that we remove our boundaries. It means that we stop taking their behavior so personally and we start responding to what's actually happening underneath the behavior. Here's something that most parents of early teenagers have never been told, and it changes everything about the shutdown. When your teenager refuses your help, you offer and they pull back. You try to connect and they go cold. You try to offer solutions or advice and they shut down. They're not just being difficult. They're protecting a form of self. Because when they continue to rely on you, it tells them that they can't survive on their own. What I mean is that, like in the early adolescence, your child is in the middle of constructing a new identity. It's fragile and it is unfinished, and they don't fully know who they are yet. And every time that you come in with advice, with correction, and a better way to do something, their nervous system experiences an evaluation of that forming self, not of the task, but of them. What they translate isn't like, oh, I didn't make the best decision, but they translated like, I am a bad person. I am a failure. I suck at this. That forming self is being evaluated by you, or they perceive that it's being evaluated by you or by us as parents in the way that we say things. And so it's defending itself. It shuts down. It pushes back. And they say, I don't need your help. Not because they don't actually need our help, but because accepting your help right now feels like admitting that the self that they're building isn't enough. The parent who understands this stops pushing in. They make themselves available without making it seem like they're evaluating a child's decisions. They offer input, but they don't insist. They say, I'm here, without making it feel like they're testing the child. That's what keeps the door open in early adolescence. Not presence that evaluates and critiques, but presence that is just accompanying them, just present there when they need. This is a critical stage where our role as the parent has to change. And the change is one of the hardest things that we have to do as parents, because we've been the director, the one who manages, organizes, corrects, guides, and that role worked really well when the child was 7. But now they're 13. And so we have to shift from being a director to being a consultant, from telling them what to do to asking them what they think the best thing is while offering perspective if they want it. From managing their activities to accompanying them through activities and decisions. A consultant is available when called upon. They offer perspective without imposing. They are very clear about boundaries and rules and expectations, but they trust that the person that they're advising is going to make the final call. And even when that person messes up on the final call, the consultant stays in the relationship through the decision, even when they disagree. That's the key thing. We have to stay with them. A director or parent who refuses to become a consultant doesn't keep the child safe. They actually lose the relationship. A teenager that doesn't have the ability to make their own decisions or try things for themselves either becomes stifled and shuts down and struggles with anxiety and depression, or they become rebellious and have behavioral challenges or even addiction. But they start to distance themselves more and more from that parent. That teenager now without a relationship with their parent is not safer. They're more exposed. The shift in us to go from director of our child to consultant to our child does not mean that we abandon boundaries. It means that we change how we hold them. So let's talk about boundaries and discipline in early adolescence. Boundaries in early adolescence, they're not walls. They are scaffolds, temporary structures that support the weight of a developing person while they're building their own internal structure. That scaffolding only works if the person inside it understands what it's for. This is the stage where, especially if we have been using the words because I said so, we should not be using the words because I said so. But if you've been using them, they have to go now. Like the child who is told because I said so has no idea why decisions are made. So now they can't make their own decisions. What it means is that every significant boundary that we hold with our early teenager needs 3 things. It needs to be clear. They need to know exactly what is the boundary. What time do I need to be home? What is the expectation around driving or access to the car, filling it up with gas, getting the car wash? Then it needs to be consistent. That's number 2. It doesn't change based off of their mood, your mood, any argument that you have. Like if the rule is that they're home, they need to be home by 10 and they're not home by 10, then the consequence is applied every time. It's not applied on a whim. And then it needs to be explained. This is where I said, like, we have to stop saying because I said so. We have to explain what the boundary is and why it's a boundary, because they need to learn how to adopt that boundary for themselves and apply it well in life. A teenager who understands the why behind a boundary has something to internalize and hold on to. It's something that they can carry with them when you're not in the room. It's something that they're not like, well, because my mom said so. They're like, no, I'm not going to do drugs because it harms my brain's development. And then it will make me go do silly, stupid things that put me at risk. Or I'm not going to watch that show because I know that it exposes me to things that are just not things that I need to stress my mind with, whatever the boundary might be. A teenager who just gets no, or because I said so, now just ends up rebelling or hiding things from you. And then discipline at this stage is one of those things where, like, if in the past we had been thinking about discipline as punishment, I have some YouTube episodes that you can go back and watch on that, because discipline and punishment are two very different things. But this is really when our skill with discipline gets tested, because punishment drives behavior underground. It does not eliminate it. The teenager who fears punishment just gets really skilled at concealing things and hiding things. But the teenager who trusts the relationship, they know that discipline's going to be there. They know why the discipline is there. They understand that the discipline will hold them accountable and make them feel better. That's a teenager who trusts the relationship, and they bring the mess to you. And that's what you want. You want to be that consultant that they come to with this mess and say, like, I really messed up. They know they're not going to be shamed, and they know they're not going to be punished. They know that there's going to be consequences, but they also know that the relationship stays intact, and that is more important than the consequence. I want to take a moment to look at a scripture example with this, and it's the moment where Jesus meets Simon Peter. He looks at this fisherman, this impulsive, unpolished, not particularly remarkable by any external measure fisherman, and he says, "You are Simon, son of John. You will be called Peter, the rock." He doesn't say you're performing like a rock. He doesn't say you've earned the name. He speaks identity over this man before Peter has done a single thing to live into it. That's the most powerful thing a parent can do for an early adolescent who doesn't know who they are yet. You speak their identity before they can even see it. You call them toward who they are becoming before they have ever arrived. You invite them into that. You call them strong. You call them beautiful. You call them capable. You speak positivity and seeds of greatness into that. And then watch what Simon Peter does. He's impulsive. He speaks before he thinks. He makes grand declarations and fails to keep them. He walks on water and then sinks. He declares he will never deny Jesus, and then he denies him 3 times. He gets spectacularly, catastrophically messed up and wrong at the moment that matters the most. Jesus never takes his name away from him. In John 21, after the resurrection, after the denial, after everything, Jesus appears on the shore. Peter jumps out of the boat and swims to him. Jesus doesn't say, "I was wrong about you." He doesn't say, "You lost the name when you lost your nerve." He says, "Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me?" 3 times. Once for every denial. He gave Simon Peter an opportunity to reverse the 3 mistakes, and then he recommissioned him to feed the sheep. The name held through every failure. The identity that Jesus spoke over Peter was not contingent on Peter's performance. It was spoken over who Peter was being formed into, not who he had already managed to try to be. This is your job with your early adolescent. You speak the identity. You watch them get it wrong. You don't revoke the name. You keep showing up on the shore. You keep asking the question that reconnects with them. And you keep calling them toward who they are becoming. Here's how you can practice this week. First move. Stop offering help constantly, because it can come across as criticism. Start offering presence. Instead of, "Let me show you how," say, "I'm around if you want to think it through." The difference is huge. One feels like evaluation. The other one feels like accompaniment. And accompaniment is what they really need right now. Second move. Speak identity before performance ever shows up. Find the thing that they are reaching toward, even imperfectly, even messily, and name what you see. Not "good job," but something more specific, like, "I noticed that you stood up for your friend. That's who you are." Or like, "Hey, I noticed that you really have stepped up your game and like looking for a job." You are giving them a mirror that shows something worth becoming. Third move, explain your boundaries out loud, not as a lecture, just as a conversation. Like, here's why this matters to me, or here's why this matters in the family. This is what I'm trying to protect you from. Here's what I can trust you with, and here's where I'm not ready to let go and trust until you've demonstrated some trust. That conversation treats them as a person capable of understanding, which is exactly who they are trying to become. Fourth move, when they shut you out, don't force them to pursue the conversation or come back, but also don't disappear and don't withdraw. Stay near, but don't crowd them. Be findable. Be the shore that they can swim back to, because they will need to swim back and they need to know that you'll be there when they do. Your early teenager, they're not lost. They are becoming, and becoming is loud and it is messy and it looks like rejection when actually it's the most important work of their whole life. Your job is not to stop the process. It's to stay in relationship through it, to shift from director to consultant, to speak identity before performance, and to hold boundaries with explanations instead of forcing them, and then be on the shore so that they can swim back to you every single time. In the next episode, we're going to move into later adolescence, ages 15 through 18, where the identity search goes deeper, where trust either compounds or collapses, and where what looks like secrecy is often a test. Will you be safe when they show up with who they're becoming? That's what's next. If today helped you understand your teenager differently, please share it with someone else. And then don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss next week's episode. If you want to work through what this relationship shift looks like in your specific home for your specific teenager, I am always available at thekairosbridge.com, and I'm happy to work alongside you. Every week, I also publish a newsletter on Substack called Heart Shapers, Legacy Makers. You can find the link in the show notes. And then finally, if you want to go deeper into understanding why behavior shows up how it does, you can grab my book, Notice It, Name It, Nurture It, on Amazon. And the accompanying workbook talks through what you can do as a parent to change how you show up to support the developmental stage that your child is in. Until next time, be well.